and welcome back to Two Chicks in a Horror Flick. I'm Tawny Ray.
And I'm Felicia Connor.
And today we have another awesome guest episode for you guys. So we have Erika and Roshane from Homies of Horror.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on. I'm super excited about this conversation. So, I guess we'll just jump into it and say that today we're going to be talking about Cabin Fever, which you guys picked.
Yeah.
So, actually, maybe before we talk about that, do you want to give a little bit of background on your podcast and how you guys got started and where to find you, obviously?
Yeah. So our podcast is Homies of Horror, obviously. We got started at the mid-ish beginning of lockdown last year. I was getting into podcasts because I work in the food industry, and so there was a lot of time of just sitting inside of the restaurant and not talking to people. And I was like, I'm just going to listen to podcasts. And then I thought it would be really fun to make a podcast. And so I reached out to Roshane one day randomly, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? Do you have time? Would you want to do a podcast? And he was basically just like, yeah, why not? And so that was how
pretty much
the idea of starting the podcast came about. But horror movies, so we originally met when we were in college, which was 10 years ago? No?
Several decades and a couple wars ago, yeah. We were back in college.
So, yeah, we met when we were in college. We went to a performing arts school, and we were in the same group for college, because the way that our college worked, it was like if you were put into groups every semester, and that was who you had every single class with. And so you could either hate everybody by the end of the semester, or you could be best friends, and luckily our group really liked each other. But I think for us, we became really good friends because we both found common ground because we loved horror movies and the horror genre, and so we would have movie nights.
Yeah, and I have always enjoyed the genre myself, but Erika is a walking horror encyclopedia, so it was really good to learn about different horror movies, and she introduced me to a lot of different stuff within the horror movie genre. And then on the flip side, I returned the favor by throwing some horror video games and stuff her way. Oh. And so we kind of had a back and forth bonding session over the genre in general. And now here we are years later.
Yeah, because I think that's what's kept our... Okay, that's not the only thing that's kept our friendship.
That's the only reason we're friends.
The only reason I like that.
The only reason I still talk to him is because every time a new horror movie comes out, I'm like, hey, have you seen this? But yeah, so it kind of just seemed like a given that would be what our podcast would be about, because we both love it so much and we love talking about it with each other so much. So I don't know, it just kind of all fell into place as far as that, the podcast theme and everything.
That's awesome. And you guys also stream, right? Video games that you play?
Yeah, we do.
It's a little bit of a work in progress, but we've been streaming on my Twitch channel for a little bit now. Just doing fun, we'll do little small tidbits for our episode. So we'll talk about whatever movie we had been watching that week and talk with people live about it, and then we'll play scary games afterwards.
Fun.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get even more into it now, but it's a slow process. It's taking a little time, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we're trying to add in more games. Right now we've been sticking to Phasmophobia. I don't know if you guys have seen or played that game.
I've only heard of it through you guys.
Okay.
It's basically Paranormal Activity, the game, where you are looking for paranormal activity within a house and trying not to get killed by the ghost while figuring out who and what the ghost is. It gets really stressful real quick.
Very stressful. It's really, I can watch horror movies all day and be fine, but you put a video game in front of me where I'm feel like I'm actively in the experience, I'm a wreck. I'm like a mess. Luckily, he can keep his cool a lot more than I can, and it's like a co-op game, so that's helpful. But if it's just me on my own devices, it's going to take me a very long time to beat the game.
I've totally mentioned this before, like Silent Hill. I remember I started playing it and I was so terrified I couldn't play it anymore. Just recently, Tawny, you'd be proud of me, I did play a game. I went into my daughter's room. She was at her friend's, and I turned on her Xbox and played. That took me a while. Played Blair Witch Project on her Xbox.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it took. I didn't even play that much of it, even though I was playing for a long time, because just trying to figure out how to move the guy around and all of that. But it was fun.
That's awesome. I've looked at that one. I just can't play that much anymore, and so it's kind of sad. But
yeah. It's fun if you ever get a chance to play Phasmophobia in particular. It's nice because it's like not a story. So if you're like, oh, I just want to try it out, you can just do like a quick hunt and then call it a day, rather than being like, oh, I have to beat this entire game.
Okay.
This is gonna be like a journey. That's what's nice about it, is it's like a quick.
It's very much like drop in, drop out. Like if you want to play, you can play for like half an hour and then be like, all right, I'm good. That's the amount that I wanted to play today.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Fun. That sounds fun.
I played like 20 minutes of Dead by Daylight, which everybody was like talking about forever. And I like just did not have a lot of fun. It was probably because I was like playing with total strangers. Like I wasn't playing with friends or anything. I think that probably makes a big difference. But I was like, I don't like this as much. Like it's kind of frightening. Like you're like, oh, this thing is right up on me all of a sudden. Like that part was scary, but I love like the story scary. It sounds like this might be right up my alley. I'll have to check it out at some point.
Yeah, definitely. If you do, let us know, because we'd be down to play.
Okay.
We'll run you through the paces. We got you.
That's
We're professionals at this point.
I need that, like, how do I play this? Because I always get it from my boyfriend Jade. I'm always like he's always getting me up and like running with any video game. And so he like got me up and running with like Dark Souls, anything really. He's like, this is how you play. This is what you want to do, which is like kind of cheating maybe, but I'll take it.
We should probably mention too, Tawny, because we always forget that we're going to spoil this movie. We're going to talk about whatever we want. So if you don't want to hear that, go watch the movie and then come back. And I know Tawny and I are probably going to curse. I always try to be better at not doing it when we have guests, but you never know what's going to come out of us. But that's about it.
Yeah, that's fine. I was about to say, I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, I'm going to try not to cuss too much. But...
No. Let it happen.
We usually say we're going to spoil the shit out of this movie, and I just censored myself to try to tone it down.
They know, Felicia. They know we got a bunch. It's all good. So just like a couple more questions for you guys, just because I think it's always a great opportunity to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more. And I actually don't know if I've heard you guys talk about this on maybe a while ago, so I probably have forgotten, like in your intro episode, but what started off like both of your love for horror? Which I'm assuming was when you were a little kid, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think, do you want to go first or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go from my memory banks.
Yeah. So for me, when I was a little kid, I was a pretty big scaredy cat. I used to get scared really easily by movies that weren't even horror movies. Like the first memory that I have of that is the Titanic, the scene where they like go down and they're just going through the ship and everything's like covered in algae and it's really dark and blue. I don't know why that memory just like stuck in my head for forever. And so for a while I was really averse to watching horror movies. And then I remember my aunt came to town and she's like a huge horror lover, and we went to Blockbuster and she rented Psycho and Eight-Legged Freaks. I don't know why those two, but she rented them and then she brought them back and she was explaining like the plot of Psycho to me. And I don't know, just the way that she was talking about it just made me really excited. And I was really interested in watching that movie because I wanted to know what she loved about it so much. And so then from there, I just kind of started introducing myself to, you know, horror movies as I could, as I like caught them on TV, or if my sister was watching one, I would like jump in and pick it up from wherever. And then I guess from there, I just kind of became like obsessed with it, and it especially helped me too to like listen to like acting commentary or director's commentary on it. It helped me to put a divide between the fact that it was a movie and not real life. So it helped me not to be as scared of it. And then I was good to go after that. I was like obsessed after that. Yeah.
I love that. Cool. So I just need to get my 7-year-old to watch the director's commentary first, and then she can watch the movie with me.
Yes.
Yeah,
have them talk over it and explain how they do everything, and then you're like, okay, like this blood and guts and stuff isn't real. It's fine.
That's pretty cool.
For me, so when I was younger, my parents never really restricted the stuff that I could like watch or play. Like I was very open. They trusted me to like you know, kind of entertain myself. And so if I ever wanted to like watch scary stuff when I was younger, I could. And my older sister, who I'd lived with, was a very huge horror fan. Like she loves horror movies, as well as like sci-fi movies. She's like a big sci-fi like original head. But I remember when I was younger, I actually went to a summer camp, and it was just one of those like day summer camps. And while we were there, the camp counselors had the bright idea of letting a bunch of like 8 and 9-year-olds play Resident Evil 2. Which was an experience for sure. And I remember like I played for all of like 5 minutes before I got like mercilessly ripped apart. And I was like, huh. Like the level of adrenaline that I felt like I think that moment kind of started my love for like zombies and stuff. Like Erika knows this, but like zombies is like my thing. Like I love all sorts of zombie content, movies, all that stuff. So I think a lot of my love for the genre kind of stems from my love of that particular facet of horror. And so from there, it over the years just expanded into from zombies to like paranormal stuff. Like I love all the Paranormal Activities. Like those are like my guilty pleasure films that I'll watch whenever I can. And when we started watching movies together in college, at that point in time, I'd now kind of shifted focus to the film industry and like learning a bit more about how movies are made and like all the nuances of all these things. And having that knowledge and then going back and watching horror movies that I've, you know, watched in the past or seeing new ones allowed me to see these movies in a different light and kind of really appreciate them for what they were. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like a fluke, I suppose, that I got into horror movies when I did. But now as an adult and with a library of movies that I've watched in the past, I'm able to, you know, really, really sit with these movies and like, know why I like these movies, not just because they give me a weird scare rush, and actually being able to kind of, figure out what it is about this genre that I love so much. So to actually answer the question, not having any restrictions on stuff growing up is kind of how I got into horror.
That's awesome. What would you say is like your favorite zombie movie?
28 Days Later, by far my favorite zombie movie. But it's followed by Shaun of the Dead for sure, which flip side, but
good ones. Really good ones.
I have a similar question for both of you. Like what is your number one scariest movie?
Ooh.
Maybe not your favorite, but the one that like
scared us.
Scariest.
I think I know what yours is. Can I say it?
Mine?
Yeah.
I mean, you can.
I'm probably
I don't know. Maybe.
Even if I'm
Try
wrong,
it.
just pretend
Try
like
it.
I was right.
Try it out. Let's see. Let's see
Okay.
what happens.
Is it the Evil Dead remake?
Oh, that's a good one, and it could have been, but it's not. Today, it's not.
Today, but it was, but today you're changing it up.
It's up there. Is that because of the story that I told you about that movie? Yeah. Is that why?
Yeah, he had a really bad nightmare from that movie, so I thought maybe that was what it was gonna be.
That was like, it was a good pick. The short version of that story, I watched the Evil Dead movie, and that night I had one of the most terrifying nightmares I have ever had in my entire life, and I have not watched that movie since. But no, today it is not Evil Dead. Actually, funny enough, it's one of the ones that you've talked about in the past, Erika, and I think it's actually Hostel. I was kind of thinking about it because, like, the concept of Hostel out of all horror movies I think I've seen actually frightens me the most, of just like going somewhere and then getting scooped up and put into this terrible situation. So yeah, I think today it's Hostel, but maybe later this week it'll go back to being Evil Dead.
Yeah. I'm a fan of that answer, obviously, because I love Hostel too.
Okay, so I've said Hostel before in the past because it did really scare me. I remember when I first saw it, I could not get like the concept of it out of my head. But for me today, because I was thinking about this, I was thinking about it earlier, and I was trying to think of a movie that really at the time scared me, and I'm gonna have to go with Saw today. I think the first one, because I remember when I first watched that, it was the first time that I really was introduced to the idea of being tortured as a way of being killed, and also like, you know, being captured and locked in this room, and it's up to me to decide if I live or die, was something that I had a hard time dealing with, because I just knew for myself there's no way I was going to survive those situations. And I remember for the longest time after watching that movie, I was like, it's fine because I'm a good person. Like, Jigsaw would never take me because I'm not a bad person. And I thought that way for a long time. So I was like, it's fine. And also I do remember too in that movie, the scene where the person is like hiding in the little girl's closet.
Oh, yeah.
That part of the movie scared me for forever. I don't have my closets open ever. Like, I can't have doors just open. And I realized that a lot of that stems from that movie. And I'm like, I just can't have them cracked. Because if that happened, I would just pass away. If my door just started slowly opening, that's it for me.
I'll just die of a heart attack. Fear. Felicia, what do you think yours is?
Oh, The Strangers.
Okay.
Because for the same reason, I remember there's a lot of movies that scared me. And if I think of at the time, like when I was a kid, that had that effect on me. Like, I remember Poltergeist with that clown under the bed, or, different things in different movies at the time at my age. But I'd have to say as like a grown adult, The Strangers was the first one where I was literally screaming, like my hands were wrapped up my husband's like jean pants, and they were like white knuckled. And it's a lot of the same reasons that you both had mentioned, that the idea of being home and someone wanting to break in and kill me. And especially with that movie, I felt, there's maybe a couple points where I'd say, oh, I would do this. But when they go to do the thing, I was like, yeah, go do that. They're like stopped in their tracks. I'm like, oh, that's not an option now. And so with that reality of it, and that someone's in the house, that terrifies me. And that echoes throughout my entire life, because I do not go to bed without checking everything, even the kids' windows, because once they fell asleep with it open, and I'm like, are you trying to kill us? So that would be it for me.
Yeah, interesting. There's like a definite theme of like real life horrors. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting segue into why did you guys choose this movie, Cabin Fever? Because I think this falls into that same realm of real real things, you know, even though I love like supernatural and that kind of horror, it's like probably my favorite genre. I also love this like real could happen stuff, more grounded in reality. So yeah, why did you pick this movie?
Okay, so I picked this one, but I was listening to your guys' Hostel episode, and I was like, oh, I should pick an Eli Roth movie because that would be fun to talk about. And so then from there, I narrowed it down to 2 choices, and one of them was The Green Inferno because that was a recent movie that I had watched from him that I didn't really like as much as I thought I was going to. And so from there, I was like, the other option was Cabin Fever because that's a movie that I haven't seen in a very long time. I barely remember aspects of it, but the one thing I always remembered was that I used to really, really like it. And I was wondering if it still would hold up for me if we watched it. So yeah, I broke it down to those 2 ones, and then I gave you guys the option because I was like, I would be happy to talk about either because they're obviously both so different for me. And so yeah, I was excited though when you chose Cabin Fever because I really only remembered a couple scenes out of this movie. And also, this was my first time watching the rated R version of it because every time I used to watch it, it was on TV.
Oh, okay.
So I had never seen the original, like, rated R version, and there was a lot of stuff that made a lot more sense to me since things weren't cut out of the movie. I was like, okay, now I understand what's happening. So that was exciting.
Getting the full picture.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it was like on TV.
It's literally just like kids that go up and they're just running around. You're like, what is happening? Like, you don't see any of the gore.
Yeah, there were so many movies where I was like, or not movies, there's so many scenes where I was like, oh, this goes on. This is a long scene. In the movie, or in the original version I watched, this was like a 2-second scene, and now it's like a full 2-minute scene. And I'm like, okay, now I'm tracking. Like, a lot of this makes sense.
That's awesome.
And Felicia hadn't seen it, right? Roshane, had you seen it?
I don't think I had.
Okay.
Or if I had, I remembered none of it. Like, I think maybe the bathtub scene was, like, somewhat familiar. Like, I remember getting to that scene and being like, have I seen this before? But the rest of the movie, no, I don't think I've seen it.
Okay.
So it was the first time for that one. And, like, even when Erika had brought up the, like, choice between the 2, I was also leaning towards Cabin Fever because I was like, I don't want to watch The Green Inferno. I still don't want to watch.
Nah, I'm an Eli Roth fan, and for the most part. But the movies can be hit and miss, and I definitely think The Green Inferno has got to be one of my least favorites. Like, I was really excited to watch it when I had heard that he was coming out with another movie, and I was just like, I was really disappointed by that one. So I was like, I'm not stoked to watch this, because we like to pick movies that we liked, you know, at least somewhat. So I'm glad that you guys were okay with that pick, because Felicia sent it to me.
I was totally fine, because I feel the exact same way that you did. Like, I was really, really excited to watch that movie, and I had heard such really good things about it, and then I watched it, and I was, part of me, one of the main reasons that I brought it up and I wanted to maybe talk about it with a group was because part of me felt like maybe I was missing something, or maybe I was being too critical about some things, but nah, that's all I needed. If you felt the same way, then I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you're alone. I don't think it's just us that dislike that one.
And Tawny, you saw Cabin Fever, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I had watched it when I was younger, and I think I had watched it maybe once or twice, like a while back, but it had also been a very long time for me. So it's interesting. We'll get into, you know, how we felt about it, but it was interesting to go back and revisit it. Mm-hmm. And I think some things held up well and other things didn't. So we'll get there. But yeah, so before we get into that, one last question. What's everybody drinking? Felicia, what are you drinking?
Water. I know. I'm drinking a giant jug of water.
It's fair. Gotta hydrate.
Well, I just grabbed it. Ran in here.
Erika, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking, so this is a Founders Moss Agave Premium Hard Seltzer.
Mm.
And it's
That
grapefruit.
sounds good.
It's actually really good. I had never tried it before. We recently got a mini fridge, and my boyfriend just bought like stuff just to
go in
stock
it.
Yeah, and I was like, let me try this. Like, why not? But it's actually really, really good. It's like very refreshing.
Oh, good.
You saying that, I just texted my husband, baby, can I have a beer?
It's a good day for one.
Yesterday was so warm. We went and sat on the porch, and I drank a couple Trulies, and it was just real nice. Real summer vibes, you know?
Feel it?
Yep. Roshane, what do you got over there?
I'm currently also on the water train myself, mostly because I actually got vaccinated yesterday.
Oh, nice.
Whoop, whoop.
And so that was exciting, but they were not lying about the side effects. So I am very much hydrating nonstop currently to like just stay above water, because it's been a rough 24 hours. We're here, but it's been rough.
Was that your first or your second dose?
I did the one doser, the Johnson Johnson.
Oh.
Okay.
And I'm basically good now, but like 10 hours afterwards, I feel like I hit the entire checklist of side effects.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, this is not fun.
I'm going tonight.
wow.
I'm getting my second dose, and I'm like,
Second dose?
I'm a little nervous. I'm like, I think it might. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'd take that over actual COVID any day, but I'm just a little anxious about it.
Did you experience the side effects the first time?
No, I had like a headache, but it was very, very minor. Even the arm soreness, other people were talking about the first one being like really bad, but it was like nothing for me.
That's what I've heard is my coworker and then my dad just got their first doses, and both of them were like, oh my God, my arm feels like it's gonna fall off. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I did warn my dad because he got it and he was like, I feel great. And I was like, hey, just a heads up, like your arm might be really sore. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks. And then 30 minutes later, he was like, oh my God, my arm. I was like, tried to tell you. I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because like I felt nothing until I tried to go to sleep last night, and then I just got hit with like honestly the worst headache I've ever had in my life. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. That was like the worst headache I've ever had. But outside of that, the rest was like chill.
Feeling good.
Yeah. That's good.
I was just like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, I haven't gotten mine, but it seems like everyone on my team were getting their vaccinations this week on different days and different mornings, and the next day everyone was just calling out sick. I'm like, no one else get a vaccination until next week, please.
The most ironic part to me is I told my mom I was getting my vaccine. She's already gotten hers, right? And she was like, all right, well, make sure you have Tylenol, just to have around because you'll probably get a headache. And of course, being a little rebel, I'm like, I don't need no Tylenol. Like, I'll be fine. Y'all should have seen me last night. Be Mom,
oh my God,
Mom, I'm sorry. I should have got the Tylenol.
You're like, will you bring me some Tylenol?
Please.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Oh, exciting. I'm so excited about the vaccination situation. I'm like, oh God, in like 2 weeks, I'm going to be able to just like not even worry about it. I'm so stoked.
It is nice to have it done and just be like, okay, cool. At least for now. We don't have to worry about it.
The peace of mind is worth the horrible headache.
Barely.
Yeah, barely.
You're like, I'm okay just staying inside, actually. So.
I like it inside.
Well, I am also drinking a Truly, just one, because I'm also afraid of potential. I got to get a baseline, I'm like, I don't need to be buzzed getting a second shot. I need to have a good baseline. But got a summer drink on hand. Okay, so are you guys ready to dive into this?
Yes.
So I will just run through the info. So we're talking about Cabin Fever from 2002, the original. Have any of you seen any of the other ones? There's like
yes,
a sequel, a remake, and a prequel. Okay.
Yeah. So I watched both the sequel and the prequel.
Okay.
I have not seen the remake because I heard that it's basically the same movie, just with new actors.
Yeah,
So
that's what I've heard too.
So part of me wants to see it just because I wonder if they've changed any of the... Now that I've rewatched it, that dialogue that's pretty outdated, I'm wondering how they've changed that or if they've changed that. So I might see it now, but I was confused about that a little bit.
I know Felicia was like, which one is it?
Yeah.
2002, 2003, 2016.
2000. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And she told me, and I'm like, okay, the one with the red skull, right? It just has a red skull. It doesn't have a... It's ridiculous.
Okay, I was just curious about that. So the director is Eli Roth, like we were saying. So the cast, I'm going to run through real quick. Ryder Strong is Paul. Jordan Ladd was Karen. James DeBello is Bert. Serena Vincent played Marcy. Joey Kern played Jeff. And then I just put this in as like a special mention. Eli Roth had a cameo as Justin/Grimm. Was his nickname. So this movie had a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 77% of Google users liked this movie. So that was kind of... I feel like anybody I talk to really loves this movie, so I was surprised actually how I thought those were going to be higher. Mm-hmm. And then the budget for it was 1.5 million, and box office was 30 million. So it was real cheap.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. It's like basically all one location and outside.
Yeah. But you think about things that like they, I mean, spoiler alert, but we'll get there in like 2 seconds anyway. But they like light a guy on fire. They have like a dog. Like I was kind of like, man, you'd think this would cost more than it did.
Yeah, that's true. Because there's a lot of like effects and stuff in here. Mm-hmm. But I wonder, I don't know, maybe they probably got that cabin for pretty cheap.
Yeah, they must have.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so now we're going to run through 2 minutes with Tawny.
2 minutes with Tawny.
A very quick recap of this movie. Okay, so when 5 friends rent a cabin for a week, Bert accidentally shoots at an obviously ill hermit and leaves him in the woods. The hermit shows up later that night and tries to take their truck, so the kids beat the shit out of him and light him on fire, and he runs off into the woods. They try to find some help, but can't seem to get it together. The hermit's dead body is revealed to be laying in the stream, which leads directly to the cabin, so when Karen drinks first, you know some shit is about to go down. One by one, the kids catch a horrible flesh-eating disease, and on top of that, have a rabid dog roaming around, occasionally attacking them. Bert gets the truck working and goes to the corner store in town, where a little boy bites him and gets infected too. The townspeople decide to hunt them down and kill them all to quarantine the disease. Meanwhile, Karen gets locked in a shed and left to die. Serena shaves her skin off in the tub. Jeff is somewhere in the woods fending for himself with the rest of the beer, and Paul has to put Karen out of her misery with a shovel because her face got eaten off by Mambo, the roaming rabid dog. Pretty much everyone dies except for Bert, who goes on an epic quest. Pretty much everyone dies. I'm going to start that again. Pretty much everyone dies except for Bert, who goes on an epic quest to get away, gets picked up by the cops, and then also dumped in the river dead. Jeff's still alive and returns to the cabin to see the massacre of everyone else and gets shot to death by the cops, who now burn all of the bodies to contain the sickness. Except everyone in town is drinking tainted water from the corner store. The end.
Good job, Tawny. That was great.
Thanks. This was a weird one because it's like the most simple story ever. But there's actually so much that happens that it was like, how do you, I don't know, wrap this up in a way that makes sense. So
because there's a lot of like bizarre moments that are actually pretty important to the story, but like saying them back, it sounds like it could almost be in a different movie. Like, I don't...
Totally.
But it's important to the movie. It's just weird.
Yeah. Yes. And...
yeah, I felt that. I was like, oh, another thing. Another thing.
So I don't know if we want to just go around and do a quick round of just like overall how we felt about the movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
Felicia, do you want to start us off being the only person who had, well, I guess Roshane, you hadn't seen it.
Roshane hadn't seen it. So.
Yeah, I hadn't really. I'm coming from a place of seeing it for the first time.
Okay, Roshane, you kick us off then. How did you overall feel about this?
So I so I wasn't a huge fan of this movie. I'll say that from the jump. I wasn't a huge fan. However, there were a lot of things in the movie that I could see were very quintessential early, like Eli Roth, that are things that I enjoyed in his later work.
Yeah.
That I feel like I saw the roots of those in this particular movie. And even though I wasn't like a huge fan of the film, it did have some parts that I did enjoy. And the cast of characters was very, very strange, but they were entertaining to watch. So yeah, overall, not my favorite movie, but there were some things that I did enjoy.
Okay. That's totally fair. Felicia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I would say overall, like, I liked-ish the movie. Like, I think it entertained,
Nice.
like, at first I was like, oh my gosh. But there were moments that entertained me. I think that is exactly the good way to put it. There were some characters that I was like, I don't know why, I just like that guy. I don't know why. And it was just, I mean, it was ridiculous. And
Yeah.
there was something enjoyable about it being ridiculous. It was like an enjoyable ridiculous, not like this is ridiculous, I don't want to watch another moment of it. Yeah, so that's how I felt about that movie.
Erika, how did you feel overall? And I imagine you'll have like maybe different experiences
Right.
from what you remember and now.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, I remember really, really liking this movie from, what I could remember of it. And so the story of this movie and the way, particularly the later half unfolds, I really enjoy. The good thing about this movie, it's only in like an hour and a half. It's once the action begins, it pretty much keeps on rolling, which I think is a pro for this movie. But a lot of the stuff that I had forgotten was everything that's like pre the infection. And like I didn't remember how they got it. Most of what I remembered was from Karen getting sick and then everything on. So like I didn't remember anything about the characters. I didn't remember their personalities. I didn't remember why they were at the cabin. So rewatching a lot of that stuff, felt new to me. And I agree that you can see a lot of where Eli Roth was like pressing out the kinks of how a lot of his future movies, like their characters are. He writes in such the dialogue that he writes is like such a specific like Eli Roth type of thing. And in this movie, it works for me sometimes, and then it doesn't a lot of the time, which is like a lot of that is it's a product of its time, but also I didn't enjoy these characters as much as I remember enjoying them, specifically Paul. I remember really, really liking his character. I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that I was equating him to Sean from Boy Meets World, and that like I was projecting that onto him because I didn't enjoy him as much this time as I did in the original. But I will say I still thoroughly enjoyed the concept of this movie, and I do think that entire plot of it and the infection side of it is really interesting and really creepy. That's the best part of this movie to me. If you can kind of get past the characters and some of the bizarre things that happen in this movie like are funny, but a lot of it falls flat for me. And I did see that this is listed as a dark comedy, like a horror / dark comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that part.
There was like a few moments of comedy, right? Like it was like,
yeah.
And it was not super in your face. I do feel like by the time we got to Hostel, it had like fully generated like that balance of comedy and horror.
Yeah.
And like you can just see, like you guys are saying, the beginnings of that here. So it's not as prominent. But yeah.
Yeah. Because I think by the time that Hostel comes around, like the characters are so obviously like meant to be what they, like we're following these group of characters and yeah, all of them are kind of caricature-y, but that's what they are. And like they stick with that the whole way through. I feel like in this one, he was kind of trying to balance realistic characters with these caricature characters. So it doesn't always mix for me as well as it does in like his later ones. But I mean, that just comes with time. So.
Right. I agree totally with what you just said, Erika. That's exactly how I feel about this. Like, I remember really liking it from the first watch of it. And I don't remember any comedy from the first time, probably because I was just too young enough to even, like, comprehend. I only remembered the getting sick on. And I remember being horrified by all of that. And I agree that I think that part is kind of the best part. And the iconic scenes, like the shaving scene, is what anybody remembers from this movie because it is so gross. It is so gory and gross. But yeah, I couldn't help but like leave this most recent viewing being like, wow, a lot of that is bad. Like a lot of that. That is not, like, the characters are weird. The writing is not great. There are these really bizarre scenes, like, especially the cameo from Eli Roth is so cringeworthy.
Was that just to introduce the dog? Because what even was that for?
I think so.
Yep.
Yes. It's so bizarre. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
It's so bizarre. I was like, Eli, I know. Did you have to be in the movie?
It's so over the top. The one thing that I feel like saves it is the fact that everybody else responds in a realistic way. Like, they're all like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, because that's how you would react if somebody was being that over the top. But I do not like that over the top. Like, that was too much. But I think I was thinking about that too, Felicia. Why do they even have this in here? It's for the dog. And the dog serves as like a plot device so that they can't get out of there, like it's like another obstacle in addition to the truck not working and the townspeople, like, but I don't know. It's like, I feel like there's a lot that we could have dropped,
Right.
Like, you could have tossed a lot of this out of the movie and trimmed it up and it would have been better. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously.
It would have been 30 minutes. No, just kidding.
But a strong 30.
But
a strong 30 minutes, yes.
Yeah.
Like that kid, why does he do... Oh, okay. No. Well, whatever, I'm just going to say it. All that weird karate at the end.
We'll talk about... Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, we're going to have to talk about the pancake scene because that is one thing that I do remember when I was younger. Every time that scene came on, I just was baffled. I couldn't understand why it had to happen that way. Like if the point of it is that you need the kid to bite him, right? Which is the whole thing. It's like this kid has to bite him. We've already established that he's a biter. Why does he have to kung fu fight his way to him to bite him? As opposed to, him just maybe getting too close and him biting him anyway. Mm-hmm. That whole... One thing about this movie that I think would have helped it is if more people died because of the virus. And like you said, like they introduce all of these obstacles. I don't necessarily feel like we needed to have the people from the town come and fight them and like come and hunt them down. It just didn't seem completely necessary. And I feel like they had already established, like with the police officer, you already established that they know that they're up there. Why couldn't the police officer have just come back and they battled it out? Like, why did you have to have the people from the town and this man carrying this box. What's in the box?
I was wondering that too.
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Why are you carrying? Like, what was he? He like tries to get it out before he dies. I was like, did you have an axe in there that you're gonna use to protect yourself? Like,
it's very tiny.
Yeah. It's just, it is all very strange, and it's fine. Like, it's fine, and I guess it kind of works in the reality of this movie, but it's the slow motion of it. I had to laugh, but not for like. I don't know if I laughed for the reasons that he was wanting me to, or if I just laughed because it needed to be cut from the movie.
Yeah, exactly. I loved and felt really like, yes, when that blonde-haired guy, the one who was scared of getting sick, that guy, when he's like running with his, with the beer and his covering his face, and his girlfriend is like, "Are you kidding me? Where are you going?" And he makes some comment about, "You all need to stay away from me. You're all up covered in her blood. Like, sorry." And I thought, yes, what? Everybody is like they're all so worried, right? And I understand wanting to take care of your friend, totally, and like lock her up, maybe in like a room, right? Maybe in a room, but I get why they did that. That's nasty, contagious, nasty. But they're like doing all this effort to lock her up, and now they're like, okay, come on, let's get in the car. And they're like all up on her and carrying her, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
so
I was
gross.
like, why don't you just open your mouth and let her vomit into your mouth? The way that they were like in her face. I was like, okay.
I didn't understand.
Anyway, sorry, I'm jumping everywhere.
No, that's okay. Let's just keep going. The problems, the weird.
Let's just talk about it.
Let's just go for it. I didn't like that. The thing that I was wondering is why put her in the shed? Just put her in a room, like, and keep the door shut. I don't,
they couldn't be worried it was airborne because they kept going into the darn thing. They kept opening the shed.
Right.
So, sorry, Tawny. I just got
You're right.
excited about that.
The only person who's afraid that it's airborne is Jeff, right? With his thing that he's trying to breathe through. So, like, no one else seems to be concerned about it. And it's just like, again, it's kind of, it's a little weak, right? Like, you can kind of just see the progression. Oh, later I want a dog to eat her face off, so she's got to be outside, right? Like, it just feels very, I don't know. Like, how can we make this happen?
Right.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot, I think.
Yeah, it feels very disjointed. That's like the biggest thing about this movie is everything feels so disjointed. And it's strange because I feel like the dark comedy aspect of it is from that. It's this world that he does create is just so ridiculous and nonsensical. Even though it's like somewhat grounded in reality, it's really just like, what is going on throughout the entire thing. And at some point in the movie, even though I wasn't like a big fan of the movie, at some point, no matter how ridiculous the scenes got, I was like, yeah, that tracks for this movie. Like, it
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It makes like, especially once you get into the infection portion of the movie, like everything that happens afterwards, I'm just like, yeah, sure. Like, and it's like, and I don't even mean that like in a bad way per se. It's like he does set it up where it's like he puts you in a mindset where it's just like literally everything else that's gonna happen. Sure, yeah, why not? We've already gone on this journey together already.
Yeah.
Might as well just keep.
Yeah,
going.
why not have a guy swallow a harmonica? Like,
right?
Why not?
Right.
Let's keep it up.
Yes.
Totally. Why not introduce a woman beating a pig or having a guy chewed in half by his dog, I guess? I don't know.
Randomly in a cave somewhere? Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, his dog. And it's funny because I actually, until you guys just said that, I didn't realize that was his dog. Like, I don't know why I didn't put that together. Yeah, it's like he was introduced because this dog needs to come back later, and this dog is apparently rabid now. But, which it's fine. I guess I didn't mind the dog too much, but I do think that they relied on that really heavily. It was like anytime they didn't know what to do or what violence was gonna come up next, all of a sudden there's a dog, and he's
Bring in
like,
the dog.
Yeah, can we get that?
We don't know where to go with this.
Set? Yeah, like sure, and it works for. I think it's the most effective when it finally does get in and is eating Karen. That's the bet. Like I was, that makes sense. You're kind of expecting that the entire movie because that's what she's afraid of. I don't think it should have eaten the other girl.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote her name down. I can't remember what it is.
Serena.
Is that what her name is? Sure.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think it should have eaten her. I think that she should have died in a different way.
Yeah.
Or even just survived maybe until Jeff came back and maybe he killed her because she was like, so far gone or something.
Gross.
Yuck.
Yuck.
But yeah, I don't know. It works best when we're focusing on the sickness. Like that's the thing of the movie. I feel like it's the most effective when we're watching them get sick and we're seeing the effects of that. And then when you add in all these extra elements, it's just a little bit too much. So the part with the party when he shows up and he's like coughing all over everybody, I actually like that scene because it's part of the sickness. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like he's gross and they're trying to get him away and he's like causing all of this havoc. Like I wouldn't have minded seeing more of that, of them like spreading it around. Like,
yeah,
that would have been cool.
It almost felt like because I think most people would agree that, yeah, the sickness part is like the best part of the movie, and that's like why you watch this movie, right? And it feels like up until that scene that you just talked about, Erika, is like they struggle to figure out how to actually use it as an effective antagonist for this movie, because it's like everybody gets infected and then they're infected dealing with other things. They're not really, for the most part, dealing with just the sickness. And, like, I wonder if that comes from just, like, not trusting the sickness to be scary enough to be a through line throughout the entire movie, that you have to introduce the huntsman from the town and the man-eating dog and stuff like that, because you need, like, more fear factor in there. I don't know, because, like, yeah, when you get to that scene and, like, he's actively infecting people, it kind of then goes into, kind of like zombie-ish territory, where it's, like, that's where that fear comes from, right? Where, like, you get bit by a zombie, oh, you're screwed, right? That same level of tension, I think it's kind of lost in the, like, first 75% of this movie, because it's, like, you get, or... what's her name? Karen gets sick, and then 30 minutes later, we finally get somebody else getting sick, and it's just like they don't cohesively just move together. I think if they had just doubled down on the sickness and maybe used the sickness in tandem with like the town and stuff more, we could have gotten more out of there. But as far as what we get in this movie, it just really feels like there is a sickness, but also deal with all these other things. I think that was kind of distracting for me.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a really good.
I think, like for me, my favorite part is the illness plotline and human panic, right? Like, so they're panicked about that, and like I think just like what you're saying, if you could just kind of replace some of this other shit with more of that, because I think that is the heart of what makes this movie scary, is the fact that they are willing to do things to their friends that they wouldn't normally be willing to do because they're scared, because they're panicked, they don't want to get sick. And like that's what I like when they lock her in the outside, it's so like inhumane, but they're so scared they feel like they don't have another option, that could have been explored in addition to the illness. And it just, for me, like one of the other things I didn't like about this is pacing. Like the pacing is weird. Even in the back part of the movie, like that's why I wrote in that he goes on a long journey. It feels like he's on an epic fantasy journey for me to like get away, and then he just ends up getting picked back up by the cops. And so I was like, okay, like all of this we could have just dropped. I feel like, I mean, again, it's easy in hindsight to say like this should have happened, but if the illness had like a quicker like onset or something, like I think that would have solved a lot of these problems, because then you don't need them to be trapped in by the dog or the townspeople or the broken truck. It's like it's tearing through them and they can't even react fast enough to like get out or something, you know? Like I feel like, without any spoilers, pacing wise, the Evil Dead remake did perfectly, because everything happens so fast. Like I feel like that could have helped this a lot.
Like, why did that guy go all the way to that big house, watch that other guy's wife, just to get chased away? Your friends are dying. You're dying. There's contagion. Like, seriously? Like, that we didn't need any of that. Like, that was... unless they just wanted more naked women in it. Like, if they wanted to fit more...
Probably.
For this film, I could see it.
Yeah,
I could see it.
okay.
This film is very bro. Like, this is the broiest film I've watched in a long time. And, like, that cringe level definitely got me through a lot of it. I was like, oh, Eli, I like you, man, but this early 2000s writing did not age well.
No. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh my God, this is too much. There's even like this thing that I read about him like fighting with Serena. Like he wanted to show her like whole ass, and she was like not down for that. She was like, because she had just come off of, I think, Not Another Teen Movie. I didn't write this down, sorry. I'm just winging it here. But where she was like nude through the entire movie, and she was like, I don't want to be typecast as like the nude person, so I'm not going to do it. And they like, I don't know, had a battle about it. And eventually she was like, okay, you can show the top like 1 inch of my ass. And so they like taped the sheets like like just 1 inch like down her ass so that they could shoot it. But it's like, yeah, I mean, I read that and I was like, okay, dude, like there's enough nudity and sex and like people trying to hook up. You know what I mean? God. Like, let it go.
Well, I mean, just that in that particular instance too, like your friend is falling apart, literally. Are you really even that interested? And maybe I'm not a man, so I don't know. Maybe I would be. I don't know. Oh, but like your friends are literally dying. The girl that you have like had a crush on forever is her face, her body is falling apart and bloody, and you're like, oh shit, naked girl. Hold on a second. Let me take a look.
Yeah, snuffing out some candles. Super casual nighttime routine. I was like, what is this lady
you don't
doing?
Do that every night?
And I guess I've been doing it wrong, I guess.
You've been doing it wrong?
Didn't know that was the way to go to sleep. But yeah, that's the thing about Paul that I don't remember, and maybe it is because I watched a cut version of this movie for so long, is Paul really is led by his penis for the majority of this movie. And it's weird. It's like, because by all regards, I think he is, out of most of them, meant to be our protagonist. And I love a layered protagonist, don't get me wrong. I don't think they all need to be saints. But the thing that was just weird about him most of the time was that he was like so sexual in moments that I don't feel like it really called for it. Yeah. It's like, oh, I just killed this man and my friend is upset and she's sick. I'm gonna like get kind of frisky with her. And then oh, now she's dying. And then a minute later, this girl might be sick, but yeah, let's have unprotected sex. And why not? Everybody else, all my friends are dying, but yeah, let's have sex because you feel bad.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, good call, Paul. Wow, you really cracked the code there. Like, all right. Yeah, and it's so funny because earlier in the movie, he tells them to have safe sex, and then he later on doesn't do the same thing, and he even questions her about it, and he's like, oh, it's fine, even though everybody's sick.
Right.
And then that was another instance where it's like his friend is desperately in need of help, and he's ogling this lady through the window, and then gets confused when her husband is mad.
Right.
He's like, oh, wait, no, my friend's sick. It's like, what? Okay.
I can see what you're doing.
Yeah, who are you? I don't care. Like, why are you staring at my wife?
At least just explain yourself. Like, I was just trying to see if anybody was home.
Just say, I didn't know if anybody was home. I was looking through the window. Instead, he just says, my friend is dying. Okay. I'm supposed to believe you. Why? Like,
right.
You're the pervert in the window. Like, get away from my house.
I did read something about the sex scene between the two of them that, like, as a piece of trivia that said, when Marcy sleeps with Paul, it wasn't meant to seem so sudden. Scenes that were filmed but not included in the final movie show Marcy and Paul becoming closer before it happened. So I think it wasn't meant to be, like, that fast. But I agree that overall, like, I mean, this happens, like, all the time. I think especially in older movies where it's like, oh, we're all going to die. You know what we should do is have sex. Like, what? No. That's, I mean... Maybe for some people, but that is certainly the last thing on my mind. I'm about survival. How am I going to survive this situation?
You have some nasty, like the nastiest contagious disease.
Right.
I am not wanting to touch anybody. That is not.
You know what I should do is introduce my genitals to this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
no.
Yeah.
And it's like, if that sequence wasn't in the movie and they just cut to her in a tub, the movie would have been fine. Like, that's the part that annoys me, is like, it's just, it serves no purpose. Like, it literally does nothing but remind you, like, hey, this one character is not getting laid and this one character likes to have sex. We already know this. We've established this in the first hour of this movie. Like, we don't need this excessive level of, like, all right, now they're hooking up. But if it was like if it was part of a bigger plot line, I do get it, but you still probably could have just taken it out completely.
Right. Yeah, I think if they had weaved it in a little bit more, and because I don't, surprisingly, them having sex isn't too big of an issue for me, because I kind of get it in the sense of, like, I like the thing she says before it happens, and I'm like, okay, I could kind of maybe believe for her specifically that she's, like, in this horrible moment and she just wants to feel close to someone, her boyfriend's left her or whatever. But I don't know, just the entire way it happens is very weird, and how he really seems like he's, like, not in. If both of them were into it, then I think it wouldn't have been so odd. Like, if he also was upset and they just found comfort in each other. But he looks really... like, he's not having a good time. And then it ends, and he's obviously paranoid about it. And I think maybe they were... maybe this was another thing where they were trying to say, oh, this is how Paul... like, how it was spread to Paul, because she obviously has it. But... if you're then going to show Paul later falling and basically kissing the dead man that harbored the disease and falling into it and his mouth is open, I'm going to assume that's how he got the disease. So the sex wasn't necessary. Yeah. Like, he basically jumps into the disease. So that's fine. Like, I get it. I get why he's sick.
Or how about you just have sex? Because that is asinine. Why are you screwing around with that dead body? I have it right here. Why is he getting that dead body, for fuck's sake? I wrote it really big on my... Everyone's sick at this point. He is trying to, like, I don't know, find help. There's a rotting, disgusting body. Let's kind of...
poke it with a stick.
Poke it off the... Come on. That was absurd. I would prefer just he had sex. Or how about he got it because he's in that place and he's feeding that girl he likes, or he was like, she was asleep and he decides, hey, let's get frisky, even though she's clearly asleep. But and then it's all over his hands.
Yeah.
How about that? Like, I assume he got it then. No. Just to make it clear, this character has it. He's gonna screw around with this dead body. We're gonna shove him into it.
Yeah, now that you say that actually would have made a lot of sense, because he got bit on the hand earlier, and if he was touching her with the same hand, okay, great. Yes. It got into his bite.
Yes.
Great.
And he's the one carrying around the water. Like, he has the water, and then he offers it to her the first time, and it's almost like there was one time where it seemed like he had the water and he kind of just offered it to her, like if she wanted any, when she was crying. And when he went in there, I didn't pick up like he got the water for her at that moment. Maybe I just missed something. So anyways, they are all in it. Like I wouldn't, they didn't need to do the sex scene, the water, they didn't, or the dead body scene. They didn't do any of that. And I already assumed that all of them, just the fact that that dude in the beginning was puking violently all over the car and they're getting close to him with bats, not hitting him though, just destroying the car. I'm assuming even just that guy spewing everywhere, they're all done for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels like they're a lot of parts, they're just trying too hard because it's like the one with the water thing in general, right? First and foremost, one of the other things that bugged me is like, this is one of those movies where a lot of this was very avoidable. From Hermit literally seeing a very, very much dead dog and still being like, ooh, let me peek inside and see what's going on in there. To water that very clearly has weird stuff in it. That
it's like
I feel
floating.
like they went out of their way to show the shots of, there's something in this water, and somehow nobody ever notices that there's stuff in the water. Anyway,
I thought it was a tooth at first.
Yeah, it was like a tooth or like an eyeball or like something. There was
an eyeball. I don't think it was an eyeball.
Whatever it was, there was clearly something in the water, right? And I'm just like, so you show the dead body in the reservoir and the water leading to the cabin and somebody getting water. That's all you have to do. Like, that's literally it. Because they're all going to need to drink water at some point. So it's already established in there how they're going to get sick. But the movie tries to find these different ways to, like, infect people. Where it's like, you already did it. Like, it's already there. It's going to happen.
Oh, that just clicked to me. That's why those two guys... Was that like why they were the ones that lasted the longest? Because they were doing this beer thing?
Yeah, they were doing the beer thing, yeah.
But also,
so getting blood on you and stuff like that doesn't infect you? It's just the water.
Right. I think it does. Like, if it gets in your, probably, like, mouth or eyes or something. But I think if it's just, like, on your skin, as long as you don't have any cuts, you should be fine if you, like, wipe it off. But that's another thing is, so I understand why Jeff didn't get it, which I will say I think that's clever. I did like that they made that bet so you understand why Jeff is fine at the end, because he hasn't drank any water and he's been smart the whole time. But Bert, did I miss something? Did Bert drink water? Why?
Yeah, remember he drank water. He just picked it up and drank it, and somebody, I don't remember who, said, you lost the bet.
Oh, okay, I missed that. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, it was Paul. Paul said, you lost the bet. It was right after Paul and the blonde guy, Jeff, fought. They were fighting in the living room, and Paul got real tough all of a sudden. Stop it, you guys! And now he's a tough guy. And then he's like, you lost the bet.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I did like that. Like, I thought that was cool and like a good idea.
It was a very natural way for him to get infected. That was just like, no, it makes sense. He's got it now.
Yeah, by the time you even knew what was happening, you'd probably be infected, because not only are they probably drinking the water, like that's how I picked up on it too, Erika, is like anytime it gets in your eyes, your mouth or whatever, like an open wound or something, you're going to get sick, because the very first person, the hermit, gets sprayed in the eye with blood and he has it. So I assume that if it gets like in anything, you're going to get sick. So like they have to take showers and like brush their teeth, and like even if you're not drinking the water, it's going to get in you somehow, right?
Some way, yeah.
So I don't know. That part was like a little bit, it did get a little muddy, because it was like, okay, are we just deciding that you only get this from ingesting it?
Do we know where it came from? Because I remember the dog. Okay, because there was the pigs, and that was disgusting. And then the dog, I'm glad you mentioned that. Because when he walked up, I was like, ew, this guy killed this dog. And then he's like rubbing this rabbit all over it. I'm like, what is he doing? And then he didn't realize it was dead. I was like, oh, this is the movie I'm getting into.
Okay. Glasses. Your dog has clearly been gutted.
Very
or
dead. It's very dead.
Yeah.
Very, very dead.
He was struggling. But yeah, I do like that too. Like that scene too, where the hermit comes up to the cabin is a really good scene. And I enjoy that scene. That's probably like one of the better ones in my opinion, because there's so much tension and there's so much going on. And I think it's a good point where it kind of like divides all the friends and you can see all of their different reactions to it. But Bert, I don't understand why Bert didn't just tell his friends that had happened. Yeah. Like, why? I could understand if Bert had accidentally killed him or something and he like was trying to hide it. But by all accounts, you hurt this guy, but then you were going to try and help him until he started being weird. You know that he saw the cabin. So like he knows that the cabin's there. Why wouldn't you just tell your friends like, hey, super sick, creepy guy lives in the woods. Just be aware of that. Let's maybe keep an eye out, all of us, because he's weird and he's obviously sick.
Really sick.
A lot of them do that throughout the movie. They withhold information from each other that I feel like doesn't need to be withheld. Maybe if the stakes were higher about what they were hiding, I could understand. Like they do that later on when Bert and Jeff go and visit that lady. And they realize that she's related to the hermit. They lie to their friends about it later. Paul lies about not being able to find help because he was staring at that naked lady. Like, they all lie about really strange things that I feel like if they were just more honest with each other, like, things would have been fine.
Yeah, because I have it written down right here. Why didn't he tell his friends? If he told his friends, that does not equal them all saying, oh, let's get out of here. Because they didn't all have a lot of respect for him in the first place. So if he was like, I ran into this nasty guy who was totally sick and I shot him with my BB gun, it probably would have been the same interaction where they're like, what is wrong with you? And they probably would have chalked it, they wouldn't have really, I can't see them all packing it up and leaving. So it wouldn't have ended the movie. It was so weird also because of what you just said. Like if he was worried he hit the guy, he didn't seem worried. Maybe that was an acting thing, but he just walked up. He's like, "Yeah, I'm killing squirrels." Like he didn't seem like nervous, like he was trying to hide the fact that he shot this guy. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Like, why wouldn't you? Why are you keeping this secret? Because in a movie, if a character is going to keep something secret, we have to know. We have to feel like, is he going to tell someone? And we have to, understand that. And this was just like stupid.
Yeah. I agree too with the
I 100% preferred sick Bert over healthy Bert.
Yeah.
The moment he got sick, he actually became a tolerable character. And I was like, where was this guy for the entire movie? Because the other version, I'm so annoyed with.
Sick Bert was like a definite upgrade for sure. I was like,
I actually have.
I've been waiting for.
This might be unpopular, but I actually have my two favorite characters was Bert, but sick. Right? Because when it started, I was like, oh, God, I hate this guy. And I kind of liked the blonde guy, Jeff. I really didn't like Paul.
Yeah.
Yuck. But then I don't know. I liked his just franticness and because that's how I feel like I would be totally. And then this might be a very unpopular opinion, but he was just so absurd that I began to like him, and it was the party man.
The cop?
I love the sheriff. I love the sheriff.
That guy. Especially after he came and was just puking blood on everybody. And he's like, man, you ruined the party. Why did you? I just really like that guy.
He is
I feel
best.
like Party Man Sheriff was what the movie was trying to be for the entire thing. And that's what, when I talked about like general thoughts about the movie, it's like that's the Eli Roth stuff of like that kind of character and this kind of world that works because like he's clearly an absurd character, but for the things that are happening, he fits right in. Like he fits right in, and he adds such a great dynamic that you don't question it at all. And like I had the same thing where I was like, he was easily one of my favorite characters. Like just because it's like you make no sense, but I'm so happy you're here.
Okay, good. I thought, oh gosh, people are gonna hate me for this, but I felt the same way.
No, he's great. And I think that scene, the party scene where he stumbles across them having this like party out in the woods, is probably the best scene to me, aside from the like the sick scenes. Like those are my favorite because I think they're the most effective, like her being in the shed and finding her and having to like kill her to stop her misery. And then the shaving scene, like those are probably my favorites because they're just so gory and good. Like that's what I like and remember about this movie. But aside from those, this is probably my favorite scene for exactly what you're saying. Like I think this perfectly encapsulates the comedy in a much better way than like the rest of the movie does. Like it's very funny. And the fact that you've got these people out there like singing about hugging each other, and the first chance they get, they're like, shoot him, like the hypocrisy of that, and like them, scattering and him being mad that he broke up the party, and then the guy with the harmonica in his neck. It's all so crazy, but it just works really well. And I feel like that scene itself was very like trimmed up, and it was very neat, and I liked that much better than I did. Like the rest of it just felt like, tossed in jokes kind of.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I do like the ending of this movie actually a lot. I think it works. Like him being in the hospital and not being able to tell them what the disease is from, and then them just getting rid of everybody. And then the lemonade scene, that's fun. Like, I like that too. How it's like, okay, great. Now everybody in this town is going to get sick.
Yes.
But the whole thing with the store clerk and all that should have been cut. Oh my God. Why did that make it into the movie?
Why?
I know.
That
has
so
nothing
dumb.
to do with nothing. I was trying so hard because I do try too hard. Like, okay, what is this saying something about what that they this isn't really a racist hillbilly, or that it, like what are they trying to say? And I'm like, they're really just saying nothing. Both of the scenes from when he said it in the store when they first got there to now giving the gun. Why? I want to have Eli Roth on just to ask him that one question.
Why?
Why?
It was a gotcha moment of like, you thought we were going this way, but we got you one the other way. It was still for what? Like for what, bro? It none of that hit. It was just like,
I can't tell you. I was glad it didn't go the other way though. So when it went and that was all happening, that scene, I was like, this is how we're gonna end the movie? But why? And then it flipped, and I'm like, what? This is exactly what I did.
Yeah, it was a better alternative to something that just shouldn't have existed in the first place. Where I was like, yeah, cool. I'm happy you went the gotcha route, but bruh, we didn't need this.
But
we didn't need this.
I will say though, although I hated like all of that dialogue and all of that stuff, I thought it was really stupid and did not need to be in the movie at all.
Did you love the clerk?
I did like the clerk, but also I really like the ending. So after that, and it cuts and the credits start, I love that image of all the hillbilly guys with the lemonade, and then the group of black people with the lemonade, and they're all like vibing to the banjo or the guitar or whatever he's playing.
Yes.
I did think that was actually really funny, but I would have preferred they cut that entire thing out than to have that, because it was just so unnecessary, and I don't think it was, and it's not funny, and Eli Roth obviously thought it was like such a good one. He was like, oh, this is a banger of a joke, but it doesn't pay off like in the way cringe. That he thinks. Like, if the whole idea was just that the kids had these assumptions, because I could see if it was maybe one of those things where like the kids come in, they have this assumption that, these people are like hillbillies and they already have these preconceived notions of them, and it turns out to be wrong. Fine, but there's definitely a better way to do that. And it also meant nothing to the movie. It had nothing to do with the movie. Like, that's not the theme of this movie, like, at all.
Exactly.
I do think it came from a place of like, because I feel like he tries to do this like subverting expectations thing all the time, right? Like, I feel like that kind of happens with Paul. Like, he seems like the nice guy. He seems like he's going to be the hero. And then we subvert that and it goes a different way. And it just, like, maybe that was the intent, was like to just add another thing onto the list of things to subvert expectations. But again, it means nothing to anything. And just because you can't, like, why, you don't need it. It's like, way over the top. But I feel like he does that. We revisit that again in Hostel 2, which I won't spoil, but yeah.
The scene though that Erika brought up with the lemonade stuff, like I really like that scene and shot too, because again, that was another like Eli Roth world moment that like when you just have them all lined up like that and then you get the truck leaving with all the water and stuff, like there's not a lot's being told to you. It's like this, when he's not trying as hard, things just seem to work way better because like he does have the ability to like nuance the scene so that you know everything that's happening without it just being spilled to you verbally. Like you can see all the things that are happening. Mm-hmm. And in terms of like scenes that I really enjoyed, I also really enjoyed the Jeff scene when he dies because that was one of those very dark comedy moments that also was like subverting expectations, but it worked for me where like he was a asshole for a majority of the movie, but for survival reasons he's like, screw you guys, I'm trying to live, and he gets back and he's like, oh, I made it. And like, I laughed because I was like, even though he does immediately die afterwards, like I would have been okay with him actually just making it and leaving. Like if he had just been like, shit, I made it, and then just ran off into the sunset, I probably would have been fine with it because it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, wow, that character survived. Okay, cool. You don't normally see that a lot, but sure, why not? And like, I think when he's in his groove and like moments like that, that's when the movie's really good. Mm-hmm. And like, those are the parts that I enjoy.
I agree.
Yeah,
I love that scene.
Yeah.
The Jeff scene?
Yeah, I love that scene. When he was going, I made it. And I'm like, oh no. I felt like, no, something's going to happen. And then he got shot up by all those
so many
people.
times.
And I think really loud I went, no. It's just so, everything is so ludicrous. That was my reaction to everything.
Yeah.
But I like that.
Going back.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the same vein of like subverting expectations and going back to the scene of the townspeople who go and try to hunt them down. This is another thing that you said it earlier that you laughed at this, Erika. I laughed because I thought it was funny that these people seemed like an actual threat. And then the moment they were actually like faced with killing somebody, they were just like bumbling around and they all like killed each other. Like that's why I thought it was funny, is because you're like, oh no, they're coming for them, right? But then they like shoot each other and die immediately. This guy gets stabbed with a screwdriver.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it kind of makes sense because it's like the people in the town aren't villains. I do think that there is a certain aspect of it where it's like, our college kids immediately look at them and think, oh God, these people are like hicks. Because even when they come up and see that lady with the pig, it's like on a farm, that's a normal thing, but to them, they're like, oh my God, like thinking she's like some murderer. And like, no, that's just, how things are done some places. But so, yeah, it's like these people in the town really aren't equipped to be going on manhunts. They just like think that they can because they have guns and they assume that these college kids are like idiots, which I mean, they kind of are. But, another small thing that I did like was at the end of the movie, there's this, how at the beginning when Paul gets bit and they're like, you should really make a sign that says not to sit next to him. At the end of the movie, there's a sign that says do not sit next to Dennis, like on the storefront. And like little things like that I think are clever. And I do also think there's when they're like sitting around the campfire and they're talking, and I can't remember who says it, but somebody says like, oh, trauma brings people together. And then Paul is like, well, only if you experience the trauma together. And I do think that that's cool. It's like they have that whole conversation and then like they go through this traumatic experience and it like completely tears their group apart. It like doesn't really bring any of them closer besides maybe Paul and the girl that he sleeps with, whose name I keep forgetting, maybe them, but other than that, it like totally destroys their entire friendship group. Like none of them band together at all.
You're right.
That's
they totally
really
just
point.
all man for himself. Like
yeah, basically from the beginning. Besides, maybe I will say, and maybe this is because he was sick, but sick Bert kind of comes through and does try and help them out. But other than him and Paul, like, most of them get torn apart pretty quickly and, like, are mad at each other right away.
Yeah. I wish I would have noticed that sign with Dennis. I didn't catch it because I would have loved that. I have one. I really liked the very, very opening sequence because I felt really creeped out. It's just like when they're not talking about it, when they're showing like who made the movie and the movie itself, and it's just like this dirty, bloody and you could hear the flies, and that's all you see. I was like, oh, I thought this was a comedy. Maybe it's going to be scary. Like, it creeped me out. I'm like, no, it's a comedy. And the only other note here I have, which, wow, I was not prepared. I was like, this is so gross. The kid bit his hand. He goes out into the water, dirty water in the ground, washes his cut, and then he's playing with this dirty dog. That's all I thought. Little did I know what was actually going to happen and how nasty it was going to get.
I wrote that down too. I was like, why don't you just use a faucet? Like,
yeah. A bottle of water.
Who gets a bite and is like, all right, well, let me just go put this in the river out back, and hopefully that'll just cure me right up.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Because he says he has tetanus or something. Not that he might not, but he's just like, yeah, it's so gross.
It's like, also, I don't understand, like, obviously, yeah, there should be some kind of warning if you know that your kid has a tendency to bite people, but also, why does Paul just go sit himself down next to this random kid and put his hand in his face and, like, talking to him? I'm like, don't bother that child. Like, why do you have to sit on the bench anyway? Like, who are you? You're the stranger. Can you stand up and get out of this kid's face? Like,
I am so glad you said that. My face is all scowly. I hated that when he did that. Oh, he thinks he's so cool. Yeah. First of all, if I was that kid's mom, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing near my kid? Get away from my kid, you stupid, drunk college kid. I would have been so pissed. But yeah, he's like, hey, man, I'm blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And that kid bit him. I was like, yeah. Now, when he goes and I was like, yeah, kid, do that. Get out of my space, stranger. But at the end, when he had to do all the karate before that, I was like, and did I miss something? Why is he talking about pancakes?
I don't think you missed anything.
Okay.
I think he just is. Also, why does he wait so long to be bitten there? That's my biggest question about the Kung Fu Dentist scene is like, you see him, you know he bites. You see him get up. You see him do Kung Fu and head in your general direction. Why do you just wait there to be bitten?
He's like mesmerized by his moves. He's like, wow, that kid sure can kick. But also it's like he sits there and watches, and then the dad does too. The dad's just like, man, here goes Dennis going again. Like, can somebody do something? To stop this. Yeah, it's like, well, I'm like, all right, I guess we'll just sit here and watch. Like, yeah, the kid is very talented, but you had time. You definitely had time to move.
He doesn't only bite. He's also very talented.
Yeah, he's also fights. But then they do the same thing earlier too, though, with the hermit, is when he's approaching the girls and they're like, get back. I was like, move. Like, why are you guys just standing there? And,
why
like,
aren't you in the house? First of all, why is everybody outside? This is stupid. Why aren't you in the house right now? Like,
it's like,
not everybody needs to be
They have like this little, I forget what they have, but they're like, get away from me or I'll stab you.
It's like hair, and then they have like hairspray. I don't know what she sprays in his eyes, but yeah, it's like everybody had to be out there, and then everybody like just lets him approach them, and they don't back up or anything. I'm like, this guy is spewing blood. Yes. Maybe make some space, like get some distance.
He is oozing.
Yes, projectile.
And you're like, like at first when they started to go out, I'm like, why are you doing that? But I know he's trying to take the truck, but he's also in the truck. Like maybe we just let him take the truck, and like we walk. You know, like, do you want to get in that truck now? That guy is oozing.
Just right off the truck. It's gone. Just let him take it.
Yeah. Just report it to the police later. I'm sure he can't get far. He seems to just want to go to the hospital, so maybe just let him drive to the hospital and then He probably won't even be able to get there. Like, this man is very delirious. He's probably not going to get it too far.
You'll probably find your truck right up the street.
Right. Yeah. It's like, no.
Just let it go.
To go back to the pancake scene, I think this might clear it up a little bit. It doesn't make it any more necessary to be in there, but I read that the scene was made up during filming after, or it might have been in the, I like listened to an interview where he talked about it being in the audition process, where he saw the kid, Matthew Helms, practicing Taekwondo. And so once he discovered that he was a real life black belt, and this kid was like young, he had said that he had been doing this Taekwondo for 6 hours a day since he was 2. Like, whoa, trained to do it. And he was like, how do you do that? And he was like, don't you go to school? And he was like, oh, I'm homeschooled. So I just like practice constantly. So at that point he was like, you know what? Let's just write this into the movie. So it's like literally just there for the sake of this kid could do it. Which is, in some ways, it's better. Actually. Yeah. Like, it still has nothing to do with anything, but like, all right.
It's sweet though.
That is cute.
Hey kid. Do your thing.
Good job. You can, and you can tell by the way that it's shot that they very much wanted to like highlight him because of the slow motion and the way that you can see his entire body. But I do, and then later on when Paul is in the hospital, he's like pushed by a broom and he like hallucinates Dennis getting served pancakes by like a giant bunny rabbit.
I only saw the bunny rabbit.
Yeah, he's
like
holding a plate of pancakes, but that also kind of doesn't make sense because Paul wasn't there when that happened.
Right.
So why would he hallucinate that? He didn't know about the pancakes.
And that's pretty amazing you saw that. I only saw the bunny.
Yeah, I was very fixated on the bunny.
I only noticed it this time because that's one of the parts I remembered from watching it the first time. So I was expecting the bunny, so it didn't surprise me. So I like could notice more about what was happening. But yeah, I was like, okay, that might have made sense if it was Bert, but I don't know why Paul would see that.
And Tawny, did they say anything about the pancakes?
No, I just knew it was there because I also did the research, right, and came across somebody talking about the fact that the bunny is serving pancakes. I didn't realize that he was serving it to Dennis. And I also am like, I don't think there's any, I think it's just like in there for the sake of being in there.
Being in there.
Yeah.
Maybe the TV version was the right version.
He could just be a big like Donnie Darko fan or something, and it's like, I want to have a bunny in here somewhere.
Was Donnie Darko out before this was made? I love Donnie Darko.
I don't know.
That's a great question, actually.
I think it was actually a Shining reference, though. Like when he walks past the, the hotel room or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Maybe. Because I did also notice it seemed like there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre shot reference in the part where she's like walking up to that house and it like is shooting and it like goes up her butt and like goes up her body. Yeah. I feel like that was like an homage to that shot from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm going to be surprised if he was just like throwing in references. Because he's he definitely is like a horror fan and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think he talks about this movie is to pay homage to a lot of the stuff that he likes. So there being random references from other horror movies, I think tracks for what he was going for.
Yeah, he did talk about, I watched an interview and he talks about, I can't remember the exact specifics, but I think what you're saying, Erika, he talked about that being a Texas Chainsaw reference. And I think the screwdriver in the ear is like it's like a reference to The Hills Have Eyes or something like that. And then they're listening to a song on the way to the cabin that I think was in a different movie. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I should have written it down, but there's like a handful of references like this in there. I just don't remember specifics.
And I think, too, some of it might be like a Deliverance, like a reference to Deliverance. And that whole idea of, like, in that movie, the outsiders coming in and kind of polarizing themselves against the people that live there. Like, and that was something that I was thinking about this time because I was like, oh, maybe the pancake scene is kind of supposed to be like the dueling banjo scene in Deliverance, but no, they're nothing. They're like not at all like each other. I was just trying to make sense of it, but no.
Yeah, I don't think this is a very like deep movie. And that's okay. You know, they don't all have to be that way, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Some of them
But I
can
will
just
say
be absurd.
the makeup does look really good in this movie, too. It's another thing I'll give to them.
So good.
The makeup looks great.
I was wondering if it was going to hold up, and it looks so real and scary and gory. I like, and that's what I kept thinking too, budget-wise. Like, they must have spent a good amount on, I think actually I might have seen Greg Nicotero on it to help with some of the makeup effects, which he's really good at what he does. But yeah, I liked that a lot, and I thought it held up. And just while we're on the subject, kind of one of my last pieces of trivia is that Eli Roth originally got the idea for this movie while working in Iceland on a horse farm, and he got a super bad skin infection. It sounds like it was like a type of ringworm infection, but he got it from like rotting hay in a barn that he was moving, and he like got something similar to this, and so he said he actually like he started to scratch his neck because it was like itchy and had like flesh like in his like nails. And he was like, oh, whatever, like, I'll just go to sleep and wake up. It won't be that bad. Woke up the next day and he started shaving. And he was peeling off, like, chunks of his skin from his, like, neck and chin. And he said even, you'd think this would hurt, but it didn't. It actually felt good because it was so itchy that I was taking off. And so he said he, like, had to go to the hospital there. And, like, it was just coming off in sheets, which is fucking disgusting and so disturbing that this is a real
I am never
thing.
Owning a horse. I'm never touching hay, and I'm never living on a farm now that I've heard of that. It's so gross. That
yeah.
That's nasty.
Sorry.
I'm going to look at horses in a whole different way now. Usually I get really excited. I'm like, oh, I want to touch that horse. Nope. Nope.
Oh my gosh. The sheets. That's what got me when you said that.
Yes.
Sorry. But I think it adds like more realism to this.
That makes sense though for the shaving scene, because I do often wonder, I'm like, why does she keep going?
Yeah.
But if that's the case,
I kept going, stop, shaving. And then you actually see blood, and then she goes again. I'm like, stop.
Yeah, maybe it feels good then. I bet it is like
if it's itchy,
quite itchy. Yeah.
Yeah. And this was ranked number 1 most gruesome movie disease of all time by Total Film Magazine in February of 2013. So it's been a while, but I mean, I stand by it. That is disgusting. When I think of like the most gross things that I can think of in horror movies, this has got to be like top 5. When they leave her out in the like shed and then they come and get her, and she's just like seeping into that blanket. So it's like, it's gone from white to like yellow, red, brown. And then they pull out the mattress that she's been laying on. And that is like, it's like one of the grossest things I think I've ever seen. Yeah, so nasty, but so effective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So now, are we ready to rate this movie?
I'm not. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going first.
I'll go first. I don't mind.
All right.
Should I
Yeah,
go?
we're ready
Do
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
What's your rating?
All right. Cabin Fever, I would give it 2.5 out of 5.
All right.
Mostly because I wasn't like a huge fan of it, watching it, and I do still kind of stand by that. Like, I watched it and I was like, this is ridiculous. But it's not all bad. And like I said earlier, there are definitely some nice foreshadowing to later Eli Roth within this movie that I did very much enjoy. And if nothing else for this movie, the actual like gore and effects of it are really, really well done and still hold up almost 20 years later. So I give it credit in that regard. It's just the writing and stuff didn't really age well, and like the plot needed some tweaking. But there are some good things for this particular movie, and that is why 2.5 is where I will sit.
That's pretty good. I thought you were gonna go lower, so I appreciate it.
Right. I thought about it, but I was like, no. actually talking it out, the parts that I did like, I think I liked more after actually talking about them. I was like, actually, that scene was actually pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
Just didn't feel that way for a majority of the movie.
Erika, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll go. Okay, I think I'm going to give this... I think I'm actually going to give it a 2.9. I felt the same way. Like, talking this movie out, I realized that even moments that I'm not a huge fan of, or they, like, seemed really weird, I don't know, it kind of works. Like, even as much as things happen, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is this happening? It still made the movie enjoyable for me. It is not as good as I remember it being. And there's a lot of moments in this movie with the characters or just random little side bits that, although they feel like they're in like necessary to the plot, I also feel like they could have been cut out and this movie would have been the same and I would have been fine. But I will say, I do think that this movie, the cabin fever part of it, like the sickness part of it, still holds up. I'm probably still gonna think about those parts of the movie because, like I said, it had been a very long time since I had seen this, and I still would randomly think about, like the shaving scene or the part where she's in the shed. Like, little things like that stick in my mind, and I feel like that's because it's creepy and scary, and for those parts of that movie, it is effective. So it's just one of those movies, like, I wouldn't mind throwing it on and watching it or having it on in the background. Like, it's an entertaining enough movie. It's short enough that I'll probably watch it again, but I will just go into it knowing that it is not the masterpiece that my child brain had convinced me it was, and that it is what it is. Like, it's just one of those movies where you get what you think you're gonna get, and that is a bunch of stupid college students falling apart.
Literally.
Yeah, literally
and
falling
figuratively.
Apart.
Yeah.
Both.
I love it.
Felicia, do you want to go next?
All right. I am right on par with Erika. I give it a 2.9 for all the same reasons. There's definitely some stuff that could be cut. I didn't find myself wishing it was over, oddly enough. You know, sometimes you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, please, I have to watch this for the podcast. Please be over. It was just so absurd, but it was there was points that I really enjoyed, and the same thing with it was really disgusting, and those things will sit with me. And there's probably some movies I rated too high that I rated a 2.75 or a 2.5 in the past that I didn't like as much as this one, and I couldn't give them the same score. It just wasn't right. So 2.9.
Man, as you guys talked about it, I think I changed it. Because it's hard. I'm having the same struggle, Erika, where I feel like I do want to almost rate it from my nostalgia brain much higher. But watching it now, there are so many flaws. Like, it's like I actually walked away with like 90% complaints, 10% good things. But I still like it, and I still think it's worth a watch. Like, kind of one of the things that I use as my barometer is a 3 and up. In my opinion, I would recommend somebody watch for whatever reason. And so I think I'm going to give this a 3 because I do think it's worth a watch, especially in the horror genre, for those iconic scenes, for the shaving scene and the, shed scene, obviously. One of the most horrific things in this movie is the fact that he then has to kill her, like, because she is on her way out. That is horrific. Yeah. That is terrifying to me. So I like that part a lot. And so that's why I'm going to stick with, I think, a 3. But there are a lot of like just not great parts to this. And I was surprised because I thought I was going to love it again. If you had asked me before this, I would have been like, I love Cabin Fever. And I think I said that even to you guys. I love Cabin Fever. But, watching it now, you're like, oh, God.
I like Cabin Fever.
Yeah,
yes, I like it.
I like-ish Cabin Fever. I think all of us, because I went from a 2.5 to a 3. And the only reason I landed where I was, there was things that I rated a 3 that I liked better. And there was things that I rated a 2.5 that I liked worse. So I think we all agree, even though it's in this varying range.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so with that kind of wrapped up, thank you guys again for being here and being a guest on our podcast.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Do you guys want to give another plug and just tell people where they can find you?
Sure. We are Homies of Horror on all of our social media. We are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, and we are on Facebook. And we upload new episodes every single Monday. I think this comes out next Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, we just did our newest episode was on The Fourth Kind. So that is out right now.
Oh,
so excited.
I'm excited for that one.
But yeah, so new episodes come out every single Monday, and we also stream every Monday night, 6 p.m. PST. And take it away, Twitch guy.
You can find us on Twitch on my channel, which is twitch.tv/JustRoshane, or you can just go to our social medias. There's a link that will link you directly to the channel from there.
Yep. And you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, thank you guys again.
Yes,
and
thank you.
Felicia, what's next?
What's next? So we are watching Hostel 2 next.
Oh, yeah. We're just going to keep the Eli Roth train going.
I know. I was like, that's perfect. It's just like a little Eli Roth marathon.
So we're excited about that. Yes.
I told Felicia after we did Hostel, I was like, listen, the next movie I get to pick, I'm going to do Hostel 2 because obviously you can't not follow it up. You got to watch the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
Excited for that. And you also can find us on Instagram's our hub for sure. We're there the most, but we're also on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So if you'd rather watch us talk about it, you can go to YouTube and find us there. And everywhere you go, it's Two Chicks and a Horror Flick, except for Twitter, it's Two Chicks HF. I have to do that slow. I always say AF. I have to do it really slow. And also, do you want to tell them about our Patreon, Tawny?
Okay, so we have a Patreon. If you want to support the show, you can go over there. And we have some awesome tiers. And we also have a free Discord community. Discord community is also part of our Patreon tiers, but you can go over there just to, chat with us about all things horror. So that's free. And you can download an app to your phone and everything. And if you like this podcast, give us a review and rating. That's always helpful so that people find us if they search for us. And
do the same for Homies of Horror, too.
Yep. If you go listen to their episodes, which are fantastic.
Aw, thank you.
Stop.
We'll have all the links.
We'll
have
make you
all
blush.
the links in the show notes and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys again for being here. And we'll see you next week with Hostel 2. And have such a good night. No nightmares.